What's up, Knife World? This is Ryan from Knife Pivot Loop, here today to talk the 5 stages of knifedom. I've got with me a whole bunch of knives. I took a trip to Dick's Sporting Goods and picked up a bunch of stuff so that we can talk about all the stages that you might go through when you're trying to get into the hobby of knife EDC. That is, pocket knife everyday carry. To get started, let's clear all this stuff off the desk. And of course, before we get fully started, we've got to talk what's in my pocket today. Well, I've got a skiff drifter. He'll be making an appearance later in the episode today, but for now, we're going to put him away and start from the beginning. All right, and we've got in front of us the first tier. We've got our Gerber Paraframe and our Smith & Wesson knives are made of an unspecified steel, but you know what? They get the job done. They are pocket knives and they work. The Paraframe is Gerber's most popular model. They sell just tons of these, and I think it has to do with the styling. It is a pretty darn functional blade shape. We've got a nice clip point here. The handle is quite comfortable, made out of stainless steel. The handle is certainly not going to rust. I have seen these knives in action. The steel does a decent job of deterring rust, but will pick up rust spots over time, especially if it is used hard and put away wet. The lockup is decent on this one. We've got an almost 100% lockup, and if you put a bunch of pressure on this bar, you can actually make it over 100% lockup, which is not quite ideal, but the blade still doesn't shut on you and can be unlocked. The action on this guy is, well, it can be flicked out, but it is stiff and rough. Certainly not like what we're going to be seeing later. Overall, for its price, this knife is going to work for you and do well. The Smith & Wesson, likewise, an unspecified stainless steel. The action on this guy, although it is a two-handed open knife, is not smooth at all. If we look closely inside the knife, we can see that this one also features plastic washers. The pocket clip is a simple stamped piece of steel, and the lockup on this guy is not bad. No side-to-side play, no lock rock. These knife companies, these price points are doing a pretty darn good job with what they're putting out the door. If either of these guys is in your pocket, you're one of us, you're part of the club. All right, let's step it up a bit to tier 2. Here we've got pocket knives made by companies with great knife heritage and with some care and attention to detail. A lot of work has been put into the design of these knives, and the quality of the steel is going to be much better on these knives, in addition to the quality of the heat treat. These companies are going to put a lot of attention into their heat treats and into how they treat the steel. You're getting a pocket knife that is just better in a whole lot of ways. Perfectly serviceable. We've got here today a Kershaw Cryo and a Buck Bantam. The Kershaw Cryo features aluminum handles and an HCR 13 MOV blade. If we look at the packaging for these knives, we can see that they are proudly stating what steel it is that they're using. HCR 13 MOV is not an expensive steel, but it is a quality steel that makes a good blade that holds an edge pretty well. Likewise with the Buck, on the front here, we've got an advertisement of the fact that they are using 420HC and that they've had this steel hardened by Paul Bose, who is famous in the world of knife hardening and heat treating for doing just a stellar job and getting the very best out of steels. Buck pays him to do their work, and he does an excellent job with a steel that is, again, inexpensive, but can be made to perform very, very well. If we look at the knives themselves, the surfaces have good polishes. The fitment is very good. The action on the Kershaw is excellent. You can flip this thing out with ease. It's got an assist mechanism which helps you to get that flipping action in, and the washers inside of this knife are made out of phosphor bronze. You can see inside that bronze shining through. Some stamped washers there, which add longevity to the knife and are much smoother than plastic bearings. On the Buck, we've got a fiber reinforced polymer handle. In our video last week, we talked about handle materials and how specifically fiber reinforced nylon makes for a very durable and very stiff handle. This handle is going to hold up very well to lots of abuse, and the knife functions and works beautifully. The centering inside of the handles is very good. Just a knife that's going to be a joy and is something that really can last you a lifetime if you need it to. Same on the Kershaw, just a knife that feels really good in the hand, good ergonomics. More money has been spent on the design here, and rather than a simple stamped handle, we've actually got some machining into the handle itself and nice smooth edges that have been very well done. For $25, $35, or $40, these are pretty darn good. Other brands you may want to take a look at in this price range are Civivi. That is a Chinese brand, also under the family of brands that's made by We Knives, but they are producing just stellar knives at this same price point that are a joy to carry, also flip beautifully and are made with lots of attention to detail and pretty darn good steels on most occasions. You're going to want to start taking care of these knives so that they'll last you an even longer time. I, of course, use Knife Pivot Lube on all my knives. This is a very high quality lubricant that helps keep dirt and grit in suspension so that they can't harm the parts of your knives. It also really improves the action and how your knife feels and how it opens. If your knife is opening slowly or with a lot of resistance, adding a drop or two of this to your knife is going to make just a massive difference. On this Buck Bantam, I'm just going to add 1 drop to each side of the blade and allow that lube to wick itself between the scales of the knife and into where those washers are located. Just a couple of movements back and forth, and I can feel that knife is already operating much more smoothly. I may actually even be able to flick this guy open. I can. All right, moving up now into tier 3. Here we've got knives where lots of attention and design work and engineering has been put into the features and function of these knives. I've got in front of me a Spyderco Manix 2 here with an M390 blade featuring diamond-like carbon coating on the blade, aftermarket scales in TerraTough by Fireside Company, and a titanium ball bearing cage lock. Likewise, on my Benchmade bug out here, I've got diamond-like coating on an S30V blade with brass thumb studs and aftermarket carbon fiber scales. These knives feature very good materials. Typically in the blades, you're going to have a powder steel, which leads to much better edge holding and toughness at a specified hardness. The blades are also going to be incredibly uniform due to that powder steel process. You're going to get knives that hold an edge very, very well and are typically much more abrasion resistant. Pocket clips at this level are much, much nicer. Rather than a simple stamped piece of steel, we have stamped steel again, but stamped steel that is formed very nicely into these very good pocket clips that perform very well. The fit and finish on these blades is going to be excellent. The washers and friction reducers are typically going to be made of phosphor bronze, and the tolerances and fitment are going to be excellent, leading to the ability to really flick and get a really nice hand feel out of these as you operate them. They're going to close smoothly, open smoothly, last a lifetime, and the warranty, particularly on the Benchmades, is going to be just excellent. They're going to take care of you. The screws and other pieces of this knife are very well made, and you're going to be able to find for knives like this parts on the aftermarket to spice them up and add features. Specifically on this knife, I'm talking about the scales, which are made by a company that is not Benchmade, but that fit perfectly on this knife and can be used to give it that extra bit of bling. On the Spyderco, same thing. We've got a very nicely produced knife that is rugged and is going to hold up to just about anything. This one features M390, which is one of the steels that has the best edge holding of any on the market today. We can see that the blades are laser marked and typically embossed with some sort of a permanent silvering or laser engraving. And our liners are going to be of very high quality stainless steel. The blades have very good jimping cut into them to help you get a grip on the back end of the knife. Just a step up from our last category. These are knives that are collectible, that are high quality. Of course, these are going to cost more. We're talking about knives that typically cost over $100, but less than $200 typically. All right, stepping up now, we're at stage 4. These are knives that are quite a bit more expensive. You're typically talking knives that cost over $400 here. You're not necessarily getting better steels in these knives or better materials. These are knives where the maker has really paid a lot of attention to getting things perfect. First off, I've got a Chris Reeve & Cosi. Chris Reeve is a knife company that is known for getting everything just perfect in their knives. If you're pulling one of these knives out of the box for the first time, you can be guaranteed that no mistake was made and no expense was spared in getting these knives perfect. That is, the tolerances are perfect, the action is perfect, the lock bar fits up perfectly, the feel of these knives is just bank vault smooth, and everything is just going to be the way it's meant to be. A lot of thought has been put into these. We've got micarta inserts that have been machined and fit perfectly into these spaces. The blade is going to be ground perfectly, typically with a machine rather than by hand using CNC technology. The lock bar features a ceramic insert so that you get even smoother action and pretty much infinite life out of the lock bar on these guys due to the hardness of that ceramic insert. The pocket clips on these guys are typically going to be made out of titanium, which is a very good springy material that's not going to fatigue over time. There's just been a lot of thought put into this knife. If you look up closely at the knife, you can see that every single edge on this guy has been chamfered to perfection. Bead blasting is excellent. These are really kind of what you would consider the Rolex of knives. Everything's been done right. Similarly, on my hinderer here, everything has been done right on this knife. The blade is again of a very high quality powder steel, M390 in this case. Attention has been paid to every single detail. Everything fits up like it should. Action on this guy is just wonderful. You can see that the scales themselves have been machined in this very detailed 3D pattern to give you additional grip. Hinderer, like Chris Reeve, just does a really good job on their knives. You can see that the hardware here has actually been polished. Just a knife that's going to work like clockwork, and you pay for it. These really fall into the category where you're starting to get into collector knives. Some people are not even willing to use these, although they are certainly capable of a lifetime of very hard work. I personally keep these in my pocket and use them for hard tasks all the time. They certainly stand up to the test. Just great cutting instruments. And again, at this level, you're of course going to want to use knife pivot lube on these guys to keep them operating smoothly throughout the lifetime of the knife. Also, since you're carrying such a beautiful product, you may want to grab some of our microfiber swabs. These swabs feature a very tiny 1mm tip that's covered in these microfiber bristles that attract dust and dirt very effectively. If you want to keep your knife clean, simply grab one of these swabs, and one is typically enough to do an entire knife, and just brush it over the dirt and grime that's left in that knife. It'll pick up all that dust and keep it looking shiny and new. These swabs are also washable. They can be reused several times over just by using a gentle dish soap and washing them carefully under running water. All right, and shall we step it up to our final category? These are the custom knives. These are the knives that are typically made by one craftsman in their workshop, all by themselves. Every detail has been paid attention to. We've got extremely high quality materials used in this knife, and lots of handwork has been applied to get these knives into their finished condition. These are the craftsmen of the knife world. Here in front of me, I've got a Skiff Knives Drifter. This one in a titanium handle, featuring that very intricate machining in the titanium, a CTS XHP blade, which has been hand rubbed to a fine satin finish. You can see that the knife itself has some laser engraving right there on the end with the emblem of the knife maker. And a lot of attention has been put into anodizing parts to give them that colored finish. And that includes even the screws themselves, which have that anodizing applied to them. Skiff Knives even makes their own bearing cages. to house the ceramic bearings that are put into this knife to help that blade operate. And you're going to find that among many of the makers of knives of this type of quality. Other similar makers could include any of probably 100 different craftsmen, but popular brands include Grimsmo, who makes really high quality knives similar to these. We've also got Holt knives, Koenig knives, and I'm sure I'm missing millions of other makers who make small numbers of knives that are just of excellent quality. Action on these guys is typically going to be perfect, almost unspeakably perfect. On this Skiff Drifter, the detent is strong and the brake is just clean and smooth. Lockup is going to be pretty darn perfect. Again, this is because the maker has put all of his time and attention into these guys. The knife is his reputation and his calling card, and just everything has been done to make this knife as perfect as it can possibly be. Really, the craftsmanship and work put into these is absurd. If we were to compare this to a watch of some sort, this might be our Patek Philippe of knives. And we've got many makers making knives of this type of quality. This really is a knife that you may not want to use. You may want to keep it perfect because this is a true collector's item, although these knives are certainly capable of standing up to the very hardest use and extreme abuse even. All right, and there we go. Those are the 5 categories of knives that you may buy when you're getting into this hobby. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my 5 categories of knifedom. Please go ahead and jump into the knife hobby. That's it for today, guys. This is Ryan from Knife Pivot Loop signing off.